What would we do without Google? Honestly, I know there's a lot of other search engines out there, but they sure are good, aren't they? So let's see, PFAFF sewing machine history. And if any of you are really good typers, I don't want to hear about it. I'm still a hunt and peck type guy on the keyboard. Oh yeah, it's always good to go back and revisit roots, isn't it? Not necessarily through Wikipedia, which is interestingly the first entry that came up. Let's see what else we can find. Here we go. Directly from PFAFF.com. Let's see if we can just revisit that history a little bit. Again, I think it's real helpful to remind ourselves of the roots of the PFAFF Sewing Machine Company, because that's a machine that we're going to be looking at today. Even though the machine that I prepared as a gift for Carolyn out of California is a Japanese-made machine, it still has those ties to the PFAFF Sewing Machine Company. So let's see what they write here. So it says, since 1862, when George Michael Pfaff built his first sewing machine and founded the GM factory, Pfaff, the company's ambition has remained the same, to constantly renew and modernize sewing technology. Quite a few milestones have been passed along the way. Here are some of them. Lighting the way. So this is around 1862 was the very beginning, and now they're describing 1872. 10 years after the company was founded, 1,000 sewing machines had been manufactured. After Pfaff opened a new factory in Kaiserslautern, Germany in 1902, the production rate increased significantly. So that was around 1872. 1900 and 1910, machines for the masses. We proudly released our 1 millionth Pfaff sewing machine to the public. She looks happy, doesn't she? Can you see her in the... Yeah, you can see her in the picture. So around 1922, new measures in form. In 1922, we launched our first rotary hook sewing machine. And there's a cool, I like that one with the red background, don't you? 1932, freedom creates possibility. We launched the famous Pfaff 130, a high-performance zigzag machine to meet the ever-increasing demands on the market. So that was around 1932. 1950, 5 million strong, the 5 millionth Pfaff sewing machine was created and celebrated. That must be an advertisement right here from right around 1968. That's kind of cool. I've seen this pic of this gal before. I don't know if you have or not. But she is busy on the assembly line, isn't she? 1968 saw perhaps one of the biggest milestones in Pfaff history, the launch of the Pfaff 1222 featuring the original IDT for integrated dual feed as well as electronic needle piercing power. Well, the IDT was really the infancy of the walking foot series that followed, that a lot of companies developed. I think we're going to stop there because I've got to make a call right now to Carolyn. And I'm a little bit late for that call already. And today is the launch of the premiere, and we're going to be releasing this live part of it after the premiere. So if you've seen the premiere, you'll be seeing this afterwards. I just wanted to involve Carolyn in the process, as I've tried to do with other owners. And so we're going to give her a jingle, let her be a part of Good morning, Carolyn. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's been a hippity hop day already, I'll tell you.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I've been running around to places. I've been posting oftentimes the articles that I post or the information that I post on Facebook is a product of people asking for information about that. So I just posted a real interesting information-based post on needles and thread types. How do you match them? How do you choose what kind of thread goes with which needle, etc.? And then another post going into great detail about different types of needles, household and commercial types as well. So those are just a couple of the questions that have come up recently.
That's interesting and helpful, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I was just, before I gave you a call, I was just kind of revisiting the PFAFF sewing machine history a little bit. And it's always good to go back, I think, to the roots to kind of be reminded about where companies started and how they developed and how they eventually, like the PFAFF Sewing Machine Company, how they achieved greatness. And I wanted to do that in particular because the machine that you're going to be receiving is a PFAFF Hobby, which even though it was technically made in Japan, it was engineered with the diagrams and the schematics of what PFAFF wanted their sewing machine to be. So it's a Japanese PFAFF machine, if that makes any sense at all. But it's a fabulous machine, and I know we're going to be launching into the premiere in about 20 or 25 minutes, and I just wanted everyone to have the privilege and the opportunity of kind of meeting you a little bit and just hearing a little bit more about you and kind of the road that led us together and all those things. So let me go back to that premiere, and I don't remember which machine that premiere was about. To be honest with you, I've just got a flood of premieres that I've been preparing for and shooting video for and editing and all kinds of stuff. But I know that during that particular premiere, somehow we got into a dialogue about what about a person that could benefit from getting a free machine. And there's always special circumstances that come up in all of our lives. And you had an interesting story as far as how the machine that you had from the 1970s that was a Singer sewing machine ended up disappearing off the face of the earth in a sense. Can you share a little bit about that? Because I know that when you and I kind of chatted in preparation for this, I got most of it right, but I had missed a couple things as well. So.
Yes, I had one of those kind of pale green two-tone heavy metal Singers from around 73 or 74, and I dearly love it. It never broke down, but I put it in the shop. There's some person in my area who goes around picking up sewing machines at fabric stores. People drop their machines off at fabric stores, and he picks them up and takes them home, fixes them, and brings them back. And, well, he decided he liked my sewing machine and kept making excuses not to give it back to me. And so the fabric store went out of business, and so I had no way to get it back. And it left me without a sewing machine, and I borrowed one from a friend who borrowed it from someone else. And she needs it back now, so I'm going to be stuck without a sewing machine in the middle of a huge amount. I'm making curtains for all over my apartment.
Oh, neat.
And I'll be stuck. I'm working on about 4 different kinds of fabric. And I've got to make a new bedspread and finish these 4 different types of curtains, and I really need a sewing machine, and I have to give this one back. And I think what we were talking about that started this, there was a post on something to do with featherweights.
Okay,
and
yeah.
The one that I'm using, the one that I've borrowed at the moment, is a featherweight.
Okay, sure, yeah. Yeah, and well, I'm just glad, however our paths came together, I'm glad that they did, and I'm glad that you had shared with me off camera yesterday when we kind of chatted a little bit, that you really kind of struggled a little bit in kind of reaching out and validating that need, which I thought was fabulous. But eventually you mustered up the gumption and the courage, and you reached out, and I was delighted, honestly, because like I said in one of the posts, that's the good stuff. whenever any of us, and all of us have that opportunity, whether or not we take action on it is another thing, but all of us in life have so many opportunities to be a blessing to others and to help others in some way. And I know in your local area where you're from, you do a lot of that, even through community concerts and just a lot of the volunteer work that you do as well. Do you want to speak to that at all? Some of the things that you've done with that?
I live in a small town, and we have a wonderful little farmer's market. And for the last 16, 17 years, I've been on the steering committee of the farmer's market, and I manage their concert series, which is a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun for me. And I try to create a very nice, a very warm, supportive environment for the musicians. So I tend to get musicians that are basically way out of our league, but they like coming to our market because I make sure they're treated well. And we're kind of in a little rustic country town. They have a homemade stage to stand on, and a nice view of old buildings from the 1800s and a forested ridge off in the background. And so I really try to use those opportunities to get great music for my community, and it seems to work. And that's been my life's love for the past 16 or 17 years.
It sounds fabulous. And I know offline we had talked about some of the artists, and I won't name them, but one of the artists you named, I told you I would not have made it through college. There's no way I would have made it. I would not have made it through college without that particular artist in the background as I was studying and preparing for exams and presentations and other things like that. I just wore out and this is going to surprise some of you younger people, like, what did he say? But I almost wore out my cassette tapes with that particular artist because he was just, oh my goodness, he was just phenomenal. And it created such a great study atmosphere where I could just really concentrate on remembering the facts that I had to remember and studying things I had to study. There was no words that were distracting. There was no, lyrics or anything like that. It was just instrumental. And and I shared the funny story with you where when I bought my very first and one of my very few brand new cars, that particular car had a fancy, which then was pretty cutting edge. It had a stereophonic CD type player system in it or something like that. And the guy that was taking care of all the paperwork and anxious for me to sign it so they could do all their dots and cross their T's and all that and get their money, he was shocked when I said, I want that thing yanked out of that car, and I want a cassette player with an FM type radio in there so I can listen to my cassette tapes. And you had shared with me that you got a bunch of cassette tapes as well, so it's good to know I'm not alone.
No, they're great, and they don't take up much space, and they're a lot of fun, and just kind of like some people collect vinyl, and I have my collection of cassette tapes that I dearly love.
That's fabulous.
And I have a funny story about, I don't know if I told you this or not, but the musician to which we are referring came out here once and was playing in our community center. And while before the concert, he was walking around town, and he saw our county supervisor walking around with a wheelbarrow going store to store to collect money in a wheelbarrow for our community center.
Oh, neat.
And which is where he was about to play, and he was so impressed with that he vowed to come back for 3 more performances as fundraisers, and liked it so much that he still comes out every 2 or 3 years.
But you know what, the grassroots of, you and I talked about this a little bit yesterday, the grassroots of what performers started doing, why they started doing it, oftentimes in their garage, or some other venue like that didn't have the fancy stage and the bright lights and all the other hoopla stuff. And like you said, the sound checks and all that fancy dancy stuff. They like sometimes getting back to the real simple setting where they're just sharing their love and their passion for their music, and they don't have to worry about those sound checks and is the lighting okay if it's going to be a nighttime concert or whatever. That's the good stuff, I think.
I do too. Intimate locations where people actually, there's no loud sound system, and people way back in the cheap seats. It's just everybody's sitting around at tables and listening up close. I saw a Lena Horne concert that way once. I had no idea what I was getting into. She was just some person much older than me, and I didn't really want to go. And my mother and I were visiting San Francisco, and she dragged me to some club because Lena Horne was playing there. And there were only a handful of tables in the club, and we were just feet from Lena Horne. And I was stunned at how good she was.
Yeah.
She was working so hard in this tiny little intimate venue, and it was just one of the highlights of well, I've been to a lot of concerts. I started going to concerts when I was 11, and this was one of the best. She was amazing.
That does sound amazing. Now, I'm going to check my screen real quick because it went into my screensaver that you can't see because we're just chatting here, but it's got all of the images that are saved on my hard drive, so it's got original Featherweight advertisements and all that, so I've got to get that out of the way so I can see. So we're down to about, we're going to kick off your premiere in about 11 minutes. So we've got more than enough time still to chat about some other areas. You had shared something that I thought was fascinating, and oftentimes there are things that happen in our lives and we look at it as fairly ordinary. I told you when I interviewed John Smith, who had worked and used sewing machines in the Navy and also with NASA, he thought it was just no big deal. He thought, I'm just an ordinary guy and it's not, no one's going to find this interesting. Well, people just thought it was utterly fascinating. And I know, the things that you shared with me yesterday when we chatted a little bit, people also would find fascinating. One of the things you mentioned was that at one time in the past that you owned a house or you bought a house that somehow was tied to the Singer Sewing Machine Company. Can you share anything about that?
Yes. The main road, this was in DeKalb County, Georgia, and the main road in the subdivision was Singer Way. Well, all the other streets in the subdivision were named after something to do with sewing. There was Bobbin Lane, Dart Drive, Sewing Circle, Patch Place, Madras Court, Calico Court, Corduroy Court,
oh my gosh.
Herringbone Hollow, Cashmere Court and Taffeta Trail, Gingham Way, Poplin Court, Quilt Court, and Seam Street.
Oh my gosh, it's awesome.
And I checked yesterday, and those names still hold. No one has thought that was dorky or geeky and renamed them. They're still named that way.
That's fabulous. And this home you ended up buying was owned by Singer, and then you bought it from them in some way, if I understood you correctly when we talked yesterday.
Yeah, I bought it from the builder, but Singer owned the land and then developed it.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And so I didn't buy it directly from Singer, but Singer is the developer.
Very cool. Very cool. So you must, that was down in Georgia, you must have Georgian roots in it at some point in your life then, huh?
I did live there for most of my life and then have moved around a bit.
That's a beautiful area. That's a beautiful area. And even going back to when I was in high school, and you and I talked a little bit about theater, and we talked about, choral groups and that sort of thing. And I was involved in different choral groups going through high school, college and that. And we took a tour. And I was attending a Lutheran college at the time, so we went to all these different Lutheran churches and locations and such, and one of them was right down in the heart of Georgia. And, when you're at that age and you're in high school, infatuation happens in a hiccup. And the way they had it set up is there were families that agreed through their church, their Lutheran church, to host some of us that had come down, and so we literally stayed with these families. And I kid you not, in this particular house that I was staying at with a couple of other kids that were from my high school, there was a Georgia belle, if I'm using that term correctly, that captured my heart the minute I walked in the door. And I thought about that girl, I can't even tell you how long, because she just had a sweetness about her, and Her accent was intoxicating, and she was so kind. And they had a piano, and I shared with you when we chatted yesterday, I dabble on the piano a little bit, and I'll release another premiere about that because I know a couple of folks enjoyed the one that I released over a year or so ago, whenever it was. But I played the piano for her and sang for her, and she just sat there and almost, she wasn't doing it, but in my head, you know, as an adolescent, I'm hearing her almost cooing like a dove as I'm playing for her. And so, yeah, my impressions of Georgia is, oh my goodness gravy, is that a fantastic place. But you know what? There's a lot of fantastic places. I've lived kind of like you. I've moved around a bit, and I've lived in different states. I've lived around the world even. And there are fabulous fabulous folks all over the place. And that's the neat thing about this little channel of mine as well, is when this premiere goes live in about 7 minutes, there's going to be people from around the world potentially that are watching it either now or they'll be watching it afterwards. Because I can look at the stats and see all the countries, you know, Africa, the United Kingdom, and the list goes on and on. Lithuania, Iran, Iraq,
wow,
Saudi Arabia. So yeah, people will learn about you, and will have a chance to see your machine and see it sew and just all that cool stuff. So that's kind of neat. That's kind of a neat thing when we can reach out like that, and that's the beauty of technology when it works.
right,
So,
right.
but was there anything?
I'm on several international sewing groups online. What an idea! I can connect with people from all over the world and share sewing questions, and it's really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And you had also mentioned in your local area that as you've been helping to coordinate all of this and lead the events through this community outreach and through these groups that have come and everything and these performers, that you also had a chance a couple of times behind the scenes a little bit to make some of their costuming. Do you want to share anything about that?
That was something I did years ago. I had a lot of friends who were musicians when I lived in Atlanta, and there was no one in Atlanta doing performance attire. They were having to fly to Jacksonville, Florida every time they needed to do a fitting, and they were saying, please do our performance attire so we don't have to keep flying to Jacksonville. So they were willing to pay me anything I wanted to do their performance attire for them. And they were friends of mine, so I did that for a while. And
cool.
I was a social worker at the time and finally had to make a choice between one or the other and went back to my social work job. But I really did enjoy working with interesting fabrics such as silver lame and satin and trying new, I think kimonos were in vogue at the time, and midriff wrap shirts, tie shirts, and so forth. And I had a lot of fun experiences with that. I was also the wardrobe manager for one of the musicians, and I should have stuck to sewing because some of the ones that I chose for him that were store-bought didn't work very well. Some of you may remember a woman named Denise Bielman, who was an ice skater a long time ago, and she showed up for competition in a flame orange one-piece. Well, prior to that happening, I had seen a flame orange one-piece, like a unitard, in a store, and I bought that for my friend, and so he shows up on stage. Now, Cirque du Soleil does this sort of thing all the time now, but this was back in the late 70s or early 80s, and nobody did this then. I was a bit ahead of my time, and there he strolls onto the stage in a flame orange onesie, and it was, the women loved it, the men not so much. And I bought another thing. It was, for a very short period of time, and you'll see why this didn't last, there were clear vinyl jeans that he wore. I bought them for him, and he liked to wear leotards because they're comfortable. So I had him in clear plastic jeans with a leotard, and it's hot in there because plastic doesn't breathe, and so within a couple of hours it was raining inside his pants from all the condensation.
my gosh.
That was a one-hit wonder.
I'm guessing it was. Well, don't you remember when was it back in the 70s when people were wrapping themselves in cellophane or something like that for weight
Yes.
loss and stuff, and there were people going into the hospital, there were people that died, and yeah, I mean that could cook you real quick. That's hilarious. Oh my gosh. That is so funny. Well, you've had a
It was.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, it was a fun time. It was a fun. I'm always looking for something fun and interesting to do, something colorful.
That's awesome. Did you have to travel? Now were you traveling with some of these bands as well? You had to buzz around and kind of go with them?
They tried to get me to, but at this time I was still a social worker, and I could do one or the other. And I maybe missed out, but I decided having a regular paycheck and benefits was better than going on the wild ride around the country and around the world. So I did not do it long.
Sure.
For a few months.
Well, that still gave you incredible opportunities and continued to stimulate your interest in the sewing world and just all those different pieces of creative artsiness that you bring to the table through the work you've done locally and certainly through all the projects that you're going to be doing with this PFAFF hobby machine. So that'll be
absolutely
a natural extension of who you are, which is fabulous.
I have plans. Costumes. There's things like Mad Hatter festivals and what do you call it, steampunk festivals and
oh really?
Oh yes, and I have plans. I have costumes half together, but I need a sewing machine for the rest of it. So we have parties where I live, 70s parties, 80s parties, all kinds of monster parties, any kind of a theme. You can undersea parties. So there's also always a costume to be sewn.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Well, you saw my recent steampunk hat, didn't you? Or if you haven't,
No.
yeah, you'll have to check it out. I revealed it on one of the recent premieres. I literally kind of walked into the camera shot and was doing my little strut and kind of little dance, and I had my hat on, and I had the lights down low so you could see kind of a silhouette of me. You could see me, but it wasn't real clear. And then I kicked the lights on, and I said, I just got a new hat, and if I go out dancing with Mr. Bean, guess what? I'm going to be wearing this hat. So, well, I think your premiere is going to be starting in probably about 60 seconds or so. So I'll do the countdown once we get to that screen. But are you're obviously excited to get this machine, and you've already got projects lined up.
I do.
How is it the same? How is it different? And I know at this point, you've only seen still shots of it. You haven't actually seen it sew per se, but you saw some of the stitches that it did off camera. How is it different? How is it the same?
Well, you said it works with leather, and I have some Velcro, a lot of Velcro that I need to sew onto the tops of some curtains, and I wouldn't have the nerves to do that with maybe something that I've used in the past. So I'm looking forward to being able to sew on Velcro.
That's fabulous. Well, we're down to about a minute and 30 seconds, and we're going to jump into this puppy. You mentioned where you're at. Sometimes the internet, the cell signals, all that are kind of hit and miss.
Yeah.
Are you able to view it today, or will you be viewing it afterwards?
I'm trying to get into YouTube, which is where I think I'm supposed to go, and it says it's not letting me sign in.
Yeah, you don't have to be signed in necessarily, but if you just type in Cow Country Vintage and then look for my YouTube channel, you'll see this premiere under videos. It'll be streaming live. So, yeah, if you can't find it now, you can find it afterwards. But we're down to about
Here it is.
down to about 50 seconds.
All right, here it is. I've got it.
Yeah, they really have developed a great format here for creators that post videos. It's a lot more interactive. It gives you a chance to connect with the people that follow what you do, and you can interact with them in live real time, which is really cool. So
I'm looking forward to it. It sounds fun to me.
All right, we're down to 20 seconds.
Yay!
15, 14, 13, 12, 11,
11,
10.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Here we go.
That's awesome.
Oh, beautiful music.
I had to search high and low on my YouTube control panel to find Japanese music, which I wanted to open this with since the roots of the machine were Japanese. So yeah, it's gorgeous. I play a couple of different Japanese tunes, and I just think that entire culture is just fabulous and fascinating. And of course, Herr Obermeister needs to be in the shot, you know?
Oh, yeah.
I like the little ruler at the bottom too. It's kind of a neat a feature that they threw onto this machine as well.
Oh, that's good. That's useful.
So that's your stitch length controller right there.
Mm-hmm.
There's your stitch selector, and those are all the stitches you have, including buttonholes.
That's amazing. That'll be great.
And you've already seen some of this. These are the sew-offs that I did off camera as I was fine-tuning the machine and getting it ready. So.
Mm-hmm. That buttonhole attachment will be good. The one that I had on my old machine was hard to use, and this will probably be a lot better.
I'll be honest, I didn't test it. I'm not much of a buttonhole guy, but but it's something that's built into the machine. So yeah, you'll be able to put it to use for sure. And the clearance underneath the presser foot on this machine is also really quite good. So you'll have lots of room for costumes and multiple layers and everything. So
excellent. Thick fabrics.
Well, that was a beautiful piece of music, wasn't it? And obviously it stood out right away as a Japanese type tune, a Japanese song. And that is because it was. And you might be saying, well, hold on a second now. Hold on. We're really smart in this classroom. And by the way, let's officially start the classroom. So we're looking at what obviously is a PFAFF hobby. We saw Herr Obermeister. My moderator Hans from Norway just typed a note, so I'm just going to go ahead and respond to that real quick. Well, the simple answer is this is a Japanese sewing machine that happened to be made well after World War II ended in 1945, obviously. And I would challenge any of you, if you want to try to look it up and date this machine, good luck. It's a little bit challenging with some of these post-World War II machines, even ones that came decades after the war ended. And this particular one is a PFAFF Hobby Model 560Z, as in zebra. 560Z. And it comes with a 0.8 amp motor, and that's going to be evident. So this is going to be twice the power that you have with that Featherweight. It sews with so much ease.
Good.
And the Japanese do a brilliant job of setting up that motor and drive system to meter out that power. It meters out the power just beautifully when it comes to laying down stitches through heavy-duty type materials. Just like this, what's underneath the presser foot right now, genuine elk hide. And I'm going to lay down a straight stitch first, and if I have enough room next to it, I kind of cut this narrow, and that was part of the lag time at the beginning of this premiere, as you kept looking at the machine, and you were expecting something to happen, or for me to say something, and nothing happened. It's because I realized that I didn't have that genuine elk hide cut, and I needed to cut it real quick, so I was doing
That's
that
absolutely true.
we're all about being real here, and that's the truth. So, all right. And you saw as well in the opening shot the sew-offs that have already been done. I'm going to lay those on the end of the bed. But first of all, well, you know what? Let me do this genuine elk hide, and then I'll tell you the story behind this machine a little bit, if you haven't followed it on Facebook. So here goes a straight stitch through a single layer of genuine elk hide, which is about 4 or 5 ounces of leather. And if you kind of look at it from the side, you can see it's basically like sewing a belt. We're sewing a belt. So let me take the take-up arm all the way up, and here we go with a single layer of genuine elk hide. Whoops. There we go. I didn't have that take-up arm all the way up, and that's what can happen when you don't do that. You don't get good traction. So, but this
Well, Carolyn, I'm so glad that we could chat leading up to the premiere, so that you don't have to kind of hold the phone and watch the premiere at the same time. I'll go ahead and we'll go ahead and wrap up the call, but
Okay.
I'm really excited for you. I know you're going to love this machine. You're going to love watching it sew now during this live premiere, and other folks will see this premiere that we're doing right now, where they've had a chance to meet you and learn a little bit about your fascinating background. They'll watch this afterwards. So,
All right. So I will talk to you later.
all right, you take care. God bless you. Bye.
You too. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
See that from the side? Make sure your take-up arm is all the way at the highest position. Otherwise, you're not going to get good traction, just like I didn't get it right there. So first of all, just a quick little walk around the machine, and then we'll change the setting to do a zigzag. Right over here, we've got two things. We've got stitch length control, and we've got reverse right in the middle there. You just push that big old button. The Japanese love their big old buttons. So you just push that button in, hold it in, you'll be sewing in reverse, and then release it, and you'll resume sewing forward again. And then we've got settings here from 0 all the way to 5 as far as stitch length. And when we're doing 5 of the stitches that we're going to do today, we've got to have it set on 5 for sure in the yellow region. Otherwise, we're not going to get a good outcome. And then over on 0, and you can see it's colored in blue, if you do buttonholes, which we're not going to do in this premiere today, you'll want to set it on the 0 to do the buttonholes, and you'll see that on the different stitch selection options.
Well, I hope you've enjoyed this little follow-up in us having an opportunity to meet Carolyn by way of a phone conversation, and just really hear a little bit more about her fascinating history in working with sewing machines and that creative footprint. And I'm really excited to get this machine packed up. I didn't realize that she had borrowed a featherweight from somebody and that she had to turn the machine back in, so I will step up my game even more in getting that PFAFF Hobby packed up and get it heading towards California. So if you're watching this now and you hadn't seen the premiere of Carolyn's PFAFF Hobby Model 560Z, definitely want to go look at that and watch how beautifully this machine performs. Again, Japanese made, but with all the engineering and all the strength and just the incredible design and engineering that you would expect to find in a PFAFF. And when you watch that premiere, you'll see us go through the Facebook shots that I posted, looking at the inside of that machine and the solid steel everything. So God bless, and really a privilege to be a small part of fulfilling the past as it was, and giving an exciting future to Carolyn now with this complimentary machine that I have the privilege to send out to her in California. So take care, folks, and watch for other great premieres like this. God bless.
It's really, really easy with this stitch select.